Books presents an unabridged recording of The Sisters Grimm, Book 1, The Fairy Tale Detectives, by Michael Buckley. Narrated by L.J. Ganser.
Prologue. The dense forest branches scratched at their faces and arms, but Sabrina and Daphne couldn't stop running, though they had long since passed the point of exhaustion. Fear was fueling each step now. Another thunderous bellow rang in the distance, followed by the terrible sound of falling trees and shrieking animals. "We have to find a way to stop it," Daphne cried between gasps. Sabrina knew her little sister was right, but how? They were two children versus a vicious monster. "I'll think of something," Sabrina said, dragging her sister behind an enormous oak tree for a much-needed rest. Sabrina squeezed her sister's hand to reassure her while she forced oxygen into her own burning lungs. Her words were empty. She didn't have a plan. The only thing going on in her head was the thumping of blood roaring through her eardrums. But it made no difference. It had found them. Splintering wood and damp soil rained from the sky as the tree they stood next to was violently uprooted. The two girls looked up into the horrible face above them and felt hot breath blow through their hair. What's happened to our lives? Sabrina wondered. When had their world become unrecognizable? And what had happened to her, the 11-year-old girl who only 2 days ago had been just an orphan on a train? Chapter 1. 2 days ago. "I'm going to die of boredom here," Sabrina Grimm thought as she looked out the train window at Ferryport Landing, New York. The little town in the distance seemed to be mostly hills and trees next to the cold, gray Hudson River. A few 2- and 3-story brownstone buildings huddled around what appeared to be the town's only street. Beyond it were endless acres of evergreen forest. Sabrina could see no movie theaters, malls, or museums, and felt using the word town to describe Ferryport Landing was a bit of a stretch. Worse than the town was the weather. It was raining, and rain always made Sabrina melancholy. She tucked her long blonde hair behind her ear and turned her head away from the window, promising herself that she would be strong and not let her sister see her cry. She had to be the strong one. After all, she was almost 12 years old. Not that Daphne would have noticed her tears. Sabrina's 7-year-old sister had had her face pressed against the window throughout the 2-hour trip. Daphne had marveled at each ugly little spot on the map they rolled through, taking a break from the view, only to ask the occasional question about their destination. "Do they have bagels in Ferryport Landing, Ms. Smirt?" Daphne now asked the woman sitting across from them. Ms. Minerva Smirt was the girl's caseworker. She was a pinch-lipped, humorless woman in her late 50s. She had had her hooked nose buried in a book for the entire train ride. Sabrina knew she was reading only so she wouldn't have to talk to them. Ms. Smirt looked up at Daphne with an annoyed scowl and sighed, as if the question was more than she could bear. "Of course they have bagels. They have bagels everywhere," Ms. Smirt snapped. "Not on the moon," Daphne replied matter-of-factly, as she returned her gaze to the window. Ms. Smirt snarled, which caused Sabrina to snicker. Watching Daphne drive Ms. Smirt crazy was one of Sabrina's favorite pastimes. Smirt had made a mistake when she chose a career working with children, Sabrina thought, especially since she didn't seem to like them. Ms. Smirt complained whenever she had to touch their sticky hands or wipe their runny noses, and reading bedtime stories was completely out of the question. She seemed to especially dislike the Grimm sisters, and had labeled them rude, uncooperative, and a couple of know-it-alls. So Sabrina was sure it was Ms. Smirt's personal mission to get the girls out of the orphanage and into a foster home. So far, she had failed miserably. She'd sent them to live with people who were usually mean and occasionally crazy, and who had used them as maids, house-sitters, or just plain ignored them. But this time she had gone too far. This time Ms. Smirt was sending them to live with a dead woman.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.